Hello, my friends. We're back in LA after 3 amazing weeks in New York. Finally back. Just got in late last night, so just getting settled now. Get John on here in a second. How's everybody doing today? What's up? Yeah, it was. It got really hot in New York at the end there. It's actually much cooler coming back to LA. How's everybody doing? What's up? What's up, my friends? What up, Miggy? Yeah, I'm excited to get back into the flow of things. I did some remote work out there in London, did a couple little session things, but ready to be back in my space. I'm gonna bring John on here. What up?
Hello.
You're in the same place?
I am.
How are you, man?
Wait. As to be expected, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time since most of us, I think, although I know some people have been doing it, but most of us have been able to travel. So being gone for 3 weeks is super, super crazy.
Yeah, you did 3 whole weeks. It's great.
Did 3 whole weeks. It's gonna be 2, and then I was having such a blast out there that I just stayed another week. It's like, it's the time in our lives we can do that before family, before bigger obligations. I was like, I'm just gonna keep staying at the Bowery Hotel and just see my friends more, and it was a fucking ball.
I never stayed there. I love it there.
I highly recommend it. I'm definitely a big fan.
I'm going back again Thursday, and I'm staying back at the Soho House again. And now come to think of it, maybe I should have stayed at the Bowery.
Soho let you cancel that shit?
Nah. No, it's
They won't.
No, you get a 20% discount if you do non-refundable and you're a member.
Oh, you're going for the big discounts. Yeah, I learned from my friend Jeff. I'm the most like plan everything type of person, and I'm like learning how to be a little more flexible with that stuff. And seeing my friend Jeff, who's like, he won't buy a plane ticket till like, if he's like, I'm gonna go to Hong Kong next month, he'll buy the plane ticket like the day before.
Yeah, if you have an extra $4,000 for the ticket, sure. I don't necessarily roll like that. Aren't I an engineer on this podcast?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't have an extra $4,000 to buy a same day ticket.
You better get to mixing, bro. How's it been?
Good. That part's good. Getting paid is the hard part, but the mixing part's the easy part.
Yeah, maybe that's even something we could talk about. There were a few interesting questions today or this week about business related things. I know you and I have talked about doing a full conversation at some point about like rates and getting paid and that sort of thing. There were a few different questions, but the reality of this business is it is unfortunate that there are a lot of people that just take forever to pay. Nobody wants to part with their money. And since everybody's an independent contractor and there isn't a company and a payroll and an HR department and all that, I think especially for people starting out, but I don't know if it's comforting or not, but people should know that even at our level, above the success level, whatever it is, people still don't want to pay you. People are still trying to hold back money. People still try to,
Yeah, I don't know if comforting would be the word, but informed that you're not alone.
You're not alone, and it won't go away.
For me, it tends to. We've talked about this a little bit. For me, it tends to be the contracts not being finished before the songs are complete. So things are out of my control and management's control, really, where the producer and engineer agreements are not finished, and I can't get paid my back end until that occurs. So I'm on a project that I mixed last year, and the artist fired their attorney apparently halfway through, and we just found out 2 weeks ago, and we've been trying to do a deal for 5-6 months now. And it's like, oh, well, that's why it hasn't gone through. They fire their attorney. Like these things just happen. It's not really in my control. So that's why you have to be careful, and you have to save money, and you have to, if you're privileged enough, have some sort of savings and investments that, keep you sane in moments like, some months I get paid $0, but I might complete 2 albums worth of work in a month that will make me a lot of money in 3 months. But the average winds up, not being what those big months feel like, I guess.
This is one of those, and Kian said it brilliantly on there. He said, I have 2 jobs and one is trying to get paid for the other.
Yeah.
There's it's something, when we talk about people who don't work in the creative field or don't make music or don't work in creative fields generally, not really, whether it's family or friends or whatever, not really understanding the mechanics of the business and what we do day to day. That's a part that doesn't get discussed a lot, which it's good for us to touch on it, that it really is like a small business entrepreneurial path in addition to something that is deeply creative. I mean, if you're a songwriter or if you're a mastering engineer, you're still doing something very creative and being an entrepreneur at the same time. And that presents its own set of challenges that does not get discussed a lot. And you do have to think about money in a different kind of way, because somebody who has a job, I guess if you have an hourly job and you expect that you're going to continue to have that for a while, or if you have a salaried job, or if you have a contract that, your salary's through the end of the year, that's a different kind of security than you or I have probably ever had, really.
Yeah,
and all the people that are coming up, all the people that are coming up and trying to figure it out right now and get to the place where they can make enough money. As soon as you make enough money, you still need to be able to think about and plan for not making money for another 6 months or a year. That does happen. And it's not even, like you said, it's a really good point you made. You might mix 2 albums in a month, but because of the way things get billed and things get paid, and record labels won't pay until all the deals are done, or the back end has to be delivered a certain way. But then the person who is an admin at the label, they're at a different label now. And so the new person's come in and they're playing catch up. And all of a sudden you've spent 2 months with a full plate of work, but you may not see a check for many months out.
And sometimes with bigger records, people need to know, like I had a hit song, maybe 5, I won't talk about which one it was, 5 or 6 years ago. And because of the artist kind of taking their sweet ass time to sign the contract, I didn't even get my royalties for the point I had for 3 years after it came out. It took 3 years because the contract wasn't executed.
Yep.
So Sony had to back channel royalties to me, which was like a fair amount of money that could have maybe at my level 5 or 6 years ago changed my year, made me more comfortable. But instead I got it 3 years later when I was like, whoa, what a nice bonus. And that's not anyone's fault but the artist's fault. And it's not personal. It's not a slight to me or the other producer that was involved, who also didn't get paid. There's really only 2 of us that did the record. So it was like both of us would check in because we're good friends. Be like, yo, you ever see anything from that one? And we're like, nope. It's like a top 20 record. And you're like, wait, really? All over the radio and like no money. And that happens. That's my version of it. That happens with number ones. That happens with these records that people are suing because a sample, something sounds like something else, or maybe the sample wasn't cleared properly, or it was, but the estate is still saying it wasn't, and people hold up payments. So it happens at every level, even if things are done right. There's a lot of obstacles in the way. So that's why Kian's brilliant way of putting it, I have 2 jobs, the one's getting paid for the other one, is perfect, because even if things are done right, sometimes it's still a challenge. So a lot of the times it's not a slight and it's not something personal. Honestly, it's one of the reasons why I still do a fair amount of independent work that comes through my email, or just someone that found a song that I did and like it, because a lot of the times because there's less contractual issues like a label will have, we can move pretty quickly and get paid pretty quickly. And it seems like they're almost more appreciative of the work in a lot of ways. Like, oh my God, you're working on my record. Thank you so much. I've been saving up money to have a single mixed by you for so long. Like, and here's the money I have. Let me just get it out of my account. And then that makes me work differently too. I mean, they're investing in me. They've saved. They've gone through a process of holding this kind of opportunity coveted to have someone at my level or your level touch their records. And there's a lot to say about why working with independent artists solve a lot of these issues as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go with this conversation. I was looking over here in my email because I'm not going to name the artist, but it's a song I produced, mixed. I think I actually mastered because they were on a crazy deadline that I did maybe 4 years ago, which I just got from my attorney, the signature request for the deal.
There it is.
Which means even from now, it'll probably, I mean, I assume my business people like, it's signed, do the wire transfer, but it's like it's a thing I did years ago, ago, and the deal's just now getting done. And, Miggy asked on there, so what do you do about it? How do you, and it depends on what the communication is, what the relationship is, but this is why as soon as you can get someone to represent you, especially an attorney, and there's lots of good attorneys out there that will work on a percentage basis. Yep. If you're getting some work, that's how I think almost all music attorneys work. But that's why getting people to represent you is such an important part of the industry. Like, even before I'd had bigger songs, I still had like a manager, 2 people at the management company. I had an attorney, and I think I had one other person. I think I just gotten a business manager, but that's like, I got like 6 people on my team. It's like, why? It seems like, but what I'm doing is I'm running a business where there's all these different types of projects and different types of revenue streams. And sometimes it's with an independent label. Sometimes it's with a major. Sometimes I'm producing. Sometimes I'm mixing. The back end and of the business side of it is, there just aren't good. I mean, I guess there was that Don Passman book years ago, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business, which was really relevant until the internet came around. And now everything is changing and moving so quickly. It's like, how do you make those decisions? I mean, that's the reason to get business people, and presumably to listen to these kinds of conversations and have conversations with other friends of yours and see what they're doing. I mean, I really think that one of the reasons I like doing this, and it was cool to, and thank you for linking us, see Alex Toomey and shout out Alex, who's got a great spot, and it was really cool spending some time with him and how he thinks about this stuff too, and just trying to build resources for people to get good information and share information. That's why we have our Discord. That's why he has his. I know Josh Goodwin's got this, places where people can discuss and go, hey, I'm going through this thing. What do you guys think? And then you can have a group of people go, oh, I've dealt with something similar. Here's how I think about it. Because there aren't good resources for that. You really have to be both a creative person. It's the music business, right? You really have to understand both of those, or at least represent yourself in both of those in order to succeed. Because you may get to the point, as I was saying earlier, where you're making enough money where you're like, okay, I can pay my rent making music. But you may go, even if you're Jon Castelli, you may, or Matt Rad or whoever, you can work for a couple of months and not see a check for 5 or 6 months. Yeah. Even though on paper you're getting paid plenty. Like you got to be smart with your money in a different kind of way. That's why you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Sitting on a project for too long without a guarantee of it being released, or you having some sort of skin in the game on a master share or something, it makes it very difficult to sustain. If that, I've had many examples of that happen to me, or not many, but a few examples where I've invested so much in artists in development before I went full on into mixing. This is quite a few years ago now, where the record just didn't come out after big label every label executive offering deals, and I was in all the meetings too, and it was as much momentum as you can feel about a burgeoning artist, and then it fall through and making $0 from 3 years of work. It's like, this can happen. And on the same front as an engineer or mix engineer, if you're so-and-so's engineer, get a contract, or at least get a salary and know that this is what's happening. I think it could be low, but enough. Like, pick your, list your expenses and be negotiable within that to sustain, especially if you believe in the artist and you want to be by their side and can expect some sort of longevity in the relationship. Cost covered is something to not be ashamed of asking for. I don't like this slave labor when it comes to engineering, because I got a text today from one of the producers that I was in with recording 2 weeks ago when I was back in the studio, and it's like, artist really feeling the third record. I have a strong suspicion it's a lot to do with the rough mix you did on it. When you got back to your spot, you really sold the concept. It's like, I know that's accurate. I know what I did to that record elevated the possibility of this artist maybe wanting to use it on their record. I don't take that lightly. I'm glad it was noticed by someone else, but I knew exactly what I was doing. And so do you. You know what you're adding to a record, and a lot of people know what they're adding to records, and that added,
I want to say magic or touch or taste or aesthetic is value. And it could be a value work for hire or investment in copyright. Like figure out one of them, because you kind of can't rely on one project to sustain you for too long. Unless of course you have a publishing deal, you're getting an advance to make an album. Maybe you're getting a front end producer. Maybe Matt's doing a whole album at one point in his career, and he gets a front end advance for 10 songs because they know that these are the 10 songs that are going to be used. They've already written them. They've been in with everybody. Yeah. And now MattRad is getting put in charge of finishing these albums. So he is getting advanced. Therefore, upon completion, depending on what songs are used, he will get his back end. But he's getting advanced to put that energy into this project. And that's something that maybe a lot of people listening don't necessarily know. And I wanted to touch on that when it comes to mixing. There is a front end, and I'm saying sometimes I make $0. I'm offered a front end, but in order to be offered a front end on things that you're getting a point on, you have to sign, but from a label, what is called a mixer or producer declaration, which it is a very basic one-sheet contract that takes away leverage from your negotiations later. So you can sign that if you're really hungry and need the money, and you can get your front end. My lawyer, who's a very great, she's fantastic, recommends not signing these producer or mixer declarations because they give her less headroom in the final agreement, which can get me way more strong points in the deal, like how things are recouped, and different lawyer terms that maybe I don't know how to share properly here. But there's way more leverage if you don't sign that. So I don't sign them. So I
don't think I've signed a producer declaration in years and years and years. I mean,
it's not the right thing to do, but you can if you want to get your front end before the execution of the agreement. So there's a choice.
There's a lot
you might
of
have to make that choice.
Yeah. There's a lot of reason to, as soon as you can get people that you think are good, you don't want just random person representing you and taking a piece, but someone who can be an intermediary and represent you, because the truth is there's a lot of chasing and there's a lot of follow-ups and there's a lot of, hey, we're not going to deliver the final version until you pay us the front end and we have a deal. I mean, I've done that dozens and dozens of times. If there's people that I trust and people I have an ongoing relationship with, I'll start work and get into something. But a lot of times I won't start work until we have the thing agreed to and signed. And I know that a lot of people working on independent stuff, there's not going to be as many attorneys and all the sort of formalities of the industry. But it's important, I think, fundamentally to know your worth and fight for it. And that does mean sometimes you will fight a little too hard and you will lose out on some things you perceive are opportunities. But we were talking about in the Discord with a couple of different people, asking about credit and asking about, should I fight for this? But they said they're not. In the long run, your integrity with yourself and your own self-worth and self-belief and holding up the value of your work in your own mind is much more powerful than people give it credit for. If you stand up for the value of what you're doing, even if whether you're a recording engineer or a producer or a mastering engineer, whatever it is, you're there because these people can't do it without you. And not that there aren't other people that can do the job, but if you're going there as a professional and doing something, you got to stand up for that stuff. And it's hard for a lot of us. It's hard for people generally because, again, getting back to it, so many jobs out there, you have structures in place and it's expected that this person reports to this person and you clock out at this time. And there's already these structures and there's an HR department or you have a boss and you have but these are all different each time. And you as a creative professional unfortunately, you have to learn how to boss up a little bit and be an entrepreneur. But it's hard. And what you were saying before, I really liked as well about diversification, not putting all your, you didn't say diversification maybe, but this idea of not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's part of the reason that I like doing so many things. It like emotionally and creatively, I like switching from, doing everything where I'm there for the lyric and at the end of the mix and I'm doing all of it, or I'm just jumping in and helping give sort of production thoughts, or I'm doing something specific and technical, or I'm just throwing ideas at a writer. I like doing that diversity of things, but doing a diversity of projects in whatever role you're in, whether you're a mix engineer or you do a lot of different things, trying to spread out the types of commitments you make to projects. So if you're going to do some long-term projects, make sure you do some things that are a little more short term, just so you can kind of balance it out. Because like you said, you may work on something for 3 months and then the band breaks up. Like that has happened to me before, where I spent a lot of time on something and then the label implodes. And like that's
exactly,
there's nothing you can do about that. And so to make sure that you're doing lots of things and trying a lot of different things, especially when you're starting out, as we've talked about before, I think is a hugely important thing. It's hugely important.
I also like setting expectations a little bit. So, for example, I like to use real-time examples. Like this happened this week where I mixed for an artist, I think last year. He's a kind of a big artist in Germany. And last year, pandemic, I don't remember exactly the circumstance. Maybe I wasn't extremely busy the month that he asked. And, you know, they asked for a discount on the rate by a little bit, not by much, maybe by 5-10%. And I was like, sure, like this person streams well. I'm getting a point. Let's do it. They came back for another mix this week. And I have 3 albums on my plate, an EP, a couple of one-offs. Like I'm really busy right now. And they asked for the same deal. And my manager was like, no, you know, we got to do full rate this time. And we never heard back. And I checked in with Nathaniel. I was like, yo, what's good on so-and-so? He's like, they never heard back. They didn't respond. Like, okay, cool. You know, I'm not going to go back and say okay to the other rate if you're not going to hit us back in communication. You know, we're negotiable to an extent, but you also have to value yourself and value your time. If the time is busy and people are paying you your full rate, they're going to expect a certain level of output from you. That's why you have a full rate. So to occupy your time, the time that you are now putting your worth on, to understand that you're going to give your all to this project. How can I then accept a rate less than that when people are expecting me to deliver for the rate that they're paying? You have to learn how to value yourself to a degree, and time comes into that. And if you're not as busy, it's a slow month, then hook it up for people and keep your schedule busy, because we all need to practice. We all need to keep the juices flowing. I think that's really important. But I missed out. I missed out on what a lot of people watching would think is a very high mix rate. And I wish someone could have communicated, and maybe I give it to someone else and say, oh, well, this person would do it for you really well, and they'll charge even less than what you offered me. So you're going to get a deal and get a great mix, but you just cut communication. You didn't come back. Like I have pretty deep mixer friends that I would love to pass on the wealth to. And I thought that was an interesting thing. Like no communication, not sorry. We'll come back to you next time when we have the fee. Like thanks for hooking it up the last time. I understand. It just is like cold. I think that's really interesting, because I have a network of people that are at the same level that I trust as much as myself. Like, especially for certain genres, I know the right person to go to. So I think there's a missed opportunity there too. But the holding your own value thing and what you're saying, that's the most important part. Yeah. I mean, I want to go in on credits for a second, because I've kind of given up. I mean, every time I look, it's not right. It's only on Tidal anyway. I always go back to, like, I think 10 to 20% of what I mix is on AllMusic. No one finds me from that. If they do, it's probably from some like old Lady Gaga thing I did 7 years ago that's up there. Like, credits are credits. The right records speak for themselves, and the right people will find out that you did it. And it's just, man, I've been actually thinking about this a lot. I don't know if we've talked about it, but I had a couple of good conversations with 2 friends, one being a mastering engineer, one being a writer, producer, having a lot of success at the moment, just over coffee. And I don't know, I'm at a place where, my perch, my 30,000 feet view is my corner of the industry is still dominated by the same people. And there's a couple of us at my age, or a little older, a little younger than me, a couple of us engineers, like squeak in a few records here and there to the charts, or on A-list artists that have, hundreds of millions to 1 billion streams, and, gets the attention of the masses. I'm lucky. And I have zero doubt in my mind now that if I take it slow, meaning make sure there's an upward trajectory that looks like this, not like Bitcoin, and nothing against Bitcoin, as we all know. But a smooth upward trajectory, I know in 5 to 10 years from now, I will also get a chance to be in that place when these people have to retire or they're not doing as much output because they're doing other things. I will, and my peers will be one of those people. So I have this new found appreciation to the lack of the chase. Kid color, that's hilarious. I'm not really in the game of chasing the hit. I never have been, meaning I could be out networking more and I could be, reaching out to people and be like, yo man, like get me on this mix. And like, they come, and the hits have come, and they've come slowly, and they're going to come more plentifully. And it's just a different personality. It's a different mentality of these things are going to happen because I'll be whale watching. I'll be ready when the right record comes, because I'm introverted and introspective enough to say, okay, I understand the strategy. I understand why certain records work. And when they come across my desk, I'll know. And so many records are coming across my desk. I am very, very busy, and I'm thankful for that. And I want to sit on that and meditate on that and be thankful for that instead of chasing what I don't have. It just sounds like it's the ambition word that, like, when we're 55 and 60, ambition changes, and it creates a space for us to maybe not have connected on the things that actually have mattered, and the chase might leave us alone in other aspects. And I'm trying to see that a little bit earlier in life when it comes to the hit mindset, and like, what does it mean to mix the biggest records versus mixing consistently and making good money and affording a lifestyle. These are a bit bigger questions and points of view that I'm trying to grapple with on a regular.
Well, there are a few thoughts on that. One is that it's a more interesting story to talk about the new guy or the new girl, the new record maker, the new mixer, the new person having a hit. But the reality is the people that are getting the most work at the highest level are the people that were where you and I were at 15 years ago. Serban and Manny get tons and tons of work because they established their version of it years ago, but they're not going to do the Kid Laroi album. They're not going to do some of those kind of things, which is where you're going to sit. And then when those things become hits and those artists elevate, that's the next generation. And that's, again, we talk about this all the time. You really don't want to be reaching for the things that are way beyond your grasp, expecting to get them and being upset at yourself when you don't reach them. Sometimes you can go in and, get the next, I don't know, Maroon 5 single or something, but like that stuff is so entrenched as a producer, as a writer, like, J Cash is running that. They have their system. They've been doing it for years. What you really want to do is you want to do the thing with your peer group that gets huge, and then you all come up together. That's the way it mostly happens. This idea that you see the biggest things and you want to be a part of the biggest things, sure. And some of those things do happen. You do get those opportunities. But by and large, people kind of come up in their generation and in their group together. So even though, you and I know that we can do a level of work that at our best is on par with anybody, at least I believe that. I know you believe that too. That's not really what creates success. What creates success is time and relationships and collaboration and trust and communication and all these things we always talk about. And you can't just jump to the head of the line when those things it's very hard to jump to the head of the line when those things are already established with successful artists. I mean, part of the reason that successful artists are successful is they already have a lot of their people.
Yeah, I have two things to add to that, because I go back to the luck. I feel lucky and I feel gratitude. I mean, I'm on so many records that the two you name dropped, Serban and Manny, are on. I had an EP come out with Teddy Swims, and it's mixed by me, Serban, and Manny. Like, I'm in good company. Yeah. And I would also say that they're in good company. I think I bring something different to the table that they don't bring, and it fits on certain songs that might fit on the same records with them. So I feel honored to be there. But when we're talking about coming up with our peers and their career trajectory was different because there was less access, right? So they had access to rooms, they had access to consoles. Very few people knew how to use a console. So when they were coming up, They, by default, were the only people that could finish records. Then we were mixing, put Spike Stent and, Chris Lord-Alge and Tom Elmhurst, put all of these guys in the conversation. And they've sustained that based on talent and skill and relevance. But that's not how it started. It started that they were the ones that knew how to use this gear. They were trained under someone like Bob Power or Bob Clearmountain. These like industry
very few
pioneers.
Opportunities. There were very few slots for how to do this.
And now, we're on the thread. Like, everybody that is talking here wants to be a mix engineer, or I would say 70 to 80% of them. I know their Instagram handles, and I can see that I know that they want to be. He did do that. Also, speaking of, Manny did Smooth by Santana. I put every once a month, once every 2 months, I bump Glamorous by Fergie and Ludacris and Tony Maserati, man. One of the best. Crazy mixes. My mentor.
Glamorous is
that
so
mix.
good.
The top end on Glamorous and the fucking junky ass bottom, that is one of the best pop mixes of all time. But they had the access, and now everyone's got the access. So by default, there's going to be less chance to gain that amount. And no one is going to have, I will not have, none of us, even Josh Goodwin, who's a bit past me, he's not going to have the numerical success that, sorry, Josh, I love you. You're extremely talented. That Serban and Manny have. 100+ number one hit songs is almost, I would say, unattainable by a mix engineer at this point, because you've had to have had that head start mixing everything for Max Martin and Dr. Luke in the day where everything they did was a number one.
Yeah, in an era where there was a lot fewer guys doing it that were doing things. I remember Serban being the first guy that was at an A level that was mixing in the box. That was a new thing.
Yeah, so he started that. Tony was doing the hybrid about the same time, and doing the hardware insert thing, but getting rid of the console. This is the conversation that was happening. Now all of us can do it on our headphones if we wanted to. I wouldn't, but one could. So I think that there's something to say about the chase being less relevant because there's less to chase. I don't know how healthy it is to compare. This was part of the conversation with my two homies the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Why are we putting ourselves next to these people instead of in our own lane, headed a completely different direction? I don't want to mix as many songs as Serban mixes. I don't want that level of output. I want a lot of output, and I want time to do other things, right? I want to do more records that I deem cool than a straight up pop record that has no soul to it. There has to be a no saying to sustain, my creative lifestyle and interest to a degree too. And that's why it's a different point of view.
Yeah. Can I add one thing real quick, which is,
of course,
it's a bit of an aside, and I have to figure out how to say it because I don't want to name anybody in the anecdote, but let's just say
what up, Baines?
Shout out, Baines. I know a few very successful producer writers, lots of number ones, who I think a lot of people in sort of our generation of writers and producers would go, man, I would love to have written those songs. And a couple of these people are fucking miserable because they're always trying to chase more. They're trying to chase, and they're just unhappy when they don't get it. And they're scrutinizing charts for every song that comes out, and every song that isn't a monster number one, they're bummed out. There is a mentality that causes those people to, in our eyes, gain success, because that relentlessness that we talk about obsession, we talk about relentlessness, we talk about those things. There's a healthy version of it, and there's also a very unhealthy version of it, because, and there's plenty of proverbs and idioms and whatever about, comparing yourself to other people and what a losing battle that is. Status games won't get you near all this kind of stuff. You do want to compare certain things so that you can be excited about getting better and making better records, whether you're writing better things or producing or elevating your own creative spirit, whatever that is. But to try to chase things, I don't know anybody that is motivated by chasing things that is happy. I don't think I know anybody. And I know a lot of very successful, unhappy people who've had much more success than you or I, that are not any of the people we mentioned, but sort of in some of those groups. And they're just like, now, why am I not, I haven't had my number one. Like they're just, they just go crazy.
Well, there's a fine line between, some sort of high achiever and neuroses, and someone that's so neurotic that they can't separate themselves from other people's,
maybe not a line, but a giant overlap.
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's a very fine line. Like, why couldn't I have written that song? Well, you weren't in the room, and you can't do anything that you couldn't have done. Something was already done. You can't do it. And you can't take a song that's called, man, I'm so bad at the, like, making up, but like a song called
You're
Glory.
a mixer.
And or let's just take Chandelier and instead write a song called Candelabrum. Like, you can't just do that, right? You can't. We know what you're doing, and I could see, like, we've talked about this on a few episodes where, from my vantage point as a mixer, especially a new artist, I mix a lot of songs that are clearly chasing the song of the month or the song of the week. And it's not obvious. Maybe it is obvious, but no one's saying it. No A&R's like, make it sound like this. They're probably thinking it. Like, wait, this is exactly that record, but not as good, by an artist that isn't as good.
I've had that both ways.
Or a great artist with an amazing voice, but they're not performing it as well, so you can't help but compare instead of letting them go their own lane and finding their own direction. That's actually what I want to say. Like, can the other part before? It's a lot more of that.
We'll edit it out in the live.
Well, yeah, because I'm not trying to say that I'm mixing for artists that I don't think are talented. I think that a lot of them are extremely talented, but unoriginal based on whatever the influence is from the team saying this will work if you do this. And I'm at a unique place in my career that I get a lot of these artists that the song sounds the same. It might even be the same key. Sometimes Josh, my assistant, will be like, yo, wait, go to title, play a record, and it's the same key drum pattern. The song came out 2 weeks before. Yeah. You're like, oh, that's interesting. And now, granted, that's been happening for the entirety of music creation at the mass market. Like, I hadn't watched it in a long time. One of my favorite movies is That Thing You Do. And I went back in time and watched it pretty recently, a couple weeks ago. And it's like, about a one-hit wonder. And the whole machine and the mechanisms behind how you get that record to go to number one from 98, it gets in at 98 and it climbs to number one, and you're doing this show, you're doing this movie. Like, there are mechanisms that work that we know to get the song into the ears of the masses, and the business still knows how to do it. They do it really well.
Shot.
To give it the best shot. Exactly. So there's a reason why these companies exist, and I want to work with them because I want to work on these types of records when ones are special. But there's another level to the game, which is, that worked, let's try it again.
That's most of the money that gets made in the music industry is chasing something that was recently successful. It's also the most of the money that gets spent. It's very rare to get something like a Billie Eilish, where it's like a girl and her brother in a bedroom making things outside of the music industry. And whether it's literally making songs that sound like the thing. I mean, the amount of production notes I get, I'd say it's the majority of projects. Whenever I'm working on something, there's some reference to something that is a hit right now. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's always bad, or sometimes it's just like, we want it to sit on the same playlist, so make sure that it hits the right way. But a lot of times it's like, hey, this song is a hit, can we add some of that instrument? And that's something that I think, at least from my perspective, and the reason I do this, and there's plenty of people who are in the music industry because they like music, but they just want to make money. I'm in the music industry because I couldn't do anything else, and there was a long time before I was in the music industry making music. And I think most people that are watching these sorts of things, watching this and the Discord community and all that, are people that really want to make music for the sake of music. There's a lot of motivation to chase things, and you'll get that from your own head because you haven't had a hit yet. And so you're hearing the things that are hits and you're like, I should make something like that. And then aside from yourself, there's a lot of business people and there's a lot of business mechanisms that are there to continue the flow of something that is already successful. And it's important to fight against that. I mean, not fight against that as in deny it completely, but resist it as the natural place you should be creative from, because it's not a good place and it's not how things innovate. And ultimately, you're never going to be as successful as the thing you're chasing. Again, Kanye West had a great quote. He said, trend is always late, because once it's a trend, it was created by someone else in the past. And so something that's popular right now has already been created by the trendsetter. So you're already following. Yeah, every session starts with a YouTube show and tell.
Yeah,
I just show Norm Macdonald videos, so that's our influence.
But also,
chasing,
my client used Sicko Mode as a reference for over a year. That's really funny. Like that. Good.
Yeah.
You know, like reference Sicko Mode. Go for it. Copy Sicko Mode. Try.
Yeah, Sicko Mode did 2 songs just put into each other. That'll work.
Yeah.
It's like the 1 in 10,000 song that's brilliant. I love that song. And also, one of my favorite things, as a total aside,
it's hilarious.
If you haven't done it yet, everybody should go on Spotify and look at the credits for Sicko Mode. I believe there are 30 writers on it.
30 writers, yeah, exactly.
It's just great. Not a criticism at all. It's just awesome.
Imagine going home. Imagine okay, that's the #1 record, right? Imagine you got the #6 song. Let's just paint a picture here. On that same week, your song is #6. Let's just say it's #9. You got a top 10. It's #9. Like I just had. I had an 8 and then a 9, and now it's like 12 or something. It lasted for a bit. And you're like, damn, I wish I wrote Sicko Mode. So you wish that you had the happenstance of being one of 30 writers that over the course of 4 to 6 years made a part of a beat that someone decided to use the one sound in a beat that you made, that you spent 15 minutes on. Like, what are you actually saying when you say that? Like, take a step back and ask yourself, what does it mean to have wished you wrote Sicko Mode or wished you've written on it? Do you know the chances of writing a song with that and getting, there's way too much. It actually makes me feel bad.
Yeah, there's way too much stuff that's out of your control. There's just way too much stuff that's out of your control to try to reach some successes other people have had. You just got to make great shit, and you got to keep making it, and you got to make it for its own sake, and then get a couple good business people to represent you, and then then just keep doing it forever, because it's better than working in an office, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Back to that part of the conversation from earlier. The one thing I was going to say is not the one thing. I said a lot of things, but another thing I was going to say is that it's hard to forecast. It's hard to forecast your. I have an accountant that does my monthly financials, and he's like, what are you projecting for this year? And I was like, fuck if I know. Like, more than last year. I'd be happy with a little bit more than last year. Like, that's how I feel like all the time. But a lot of people really can project their finances, and then they can project, they can then offset how much they're going to invest, how much that they're going to put in some sort of tax shielding, funds, how much they're going to spend on a vacation, what's their weekly budget. I don't have a weekly budget. I'm fucking immature when it comes to that. I just spend money. And then I look at my credit card bill like, oh, I did well this month on the spending side, because I like good food, and I like unique pieces for my home. That sometimes I'm well, you're
now at
of Instagram ads.
Yeah, you're now at a position where you can do some of that, and I was actually thinking too, we could even go
I want to be
bigger
honest about it.
Yeah. We could go bigger with it, not just financially, but success-wise. Like, when I was 20, I had 3 bands from the Bay Area that all were getting major label offers. And I was like, the head of Columbia Records at the time, I was in a meeting, they said, that's a hit song. And things like that. It's like, okay, these people know what they're talking about. None of those bands sold any records. None of those, they sort of came up and got dropped. The regime changed. I had 3. And so I could have been a huge rock producer at 20, but the world just doesn't fall into place like you think it's going to fall into place over and over and over. And then some things that I didn't expect to happen became big successes and things like that. It's very hard. And the other thing is, a lot of people will tell you they're very sure, And as creative people in essentially an entrepreneurial industry, you got to really measure, like, temper your expectations and make sure that you are, make sure that you are thinking about long-term things, because short-term stuff is always going to be talked about and rarely comes to fruition. When it does, it's a great bonus. It's a great bonus. And it does happen. As
counterintuitive to what I'm about to say will sound like this, I'm going to say it anyway, but I have chosen to forfeit the concept of both free will and pride, and the feeling that I have any say over what is to or not to happen. And it's been really freeing. And it doesn't mean that there's no accountability involved. If someone does something that's personally nasty or unrespectful, disrespectful to me, that it will be called out, and I'm not going to just become a pushover, as maybe I have been in the past. But at the same time, things normally aren't what they seem. This Donald Hoffman book, Case Against Reality, our intuitions are really bad. The concept of trust your gut is not really a thing. Like there's I'm not going to go super
for certain
deep
things, yeah, but I know what you mean.
For a lot of things. I mean, except for the quite literal ones of, like, we know what foods we like that make us feel nourished and energetic or sluggish and regretful. Like that part of the gut, I would say that we do understand if you're in tune enough with your
pride and free will you're releasing.
Completely. I when I see songs come out that someone else mixed, that for an artist that I've mixed entire catalogs for, cool, they made a different decision. I've been attacked for taking gigs from someone on the other side of things and been like, I didn't take your gig. They came to me and I didn't know that was your gig. Like, oh, sorry, my bad. I didn't, like,
if they're not hiring you, it's not your gig.
Yeah. And that's going to happen in our peer group. There's just way too much evidence to say that things happen out of our control than to say that we have any control over it. So to say you wished you have written that song, or you could have made that song better, is just false, because you couldn't have, because you didn't. Yeah. And to live thinking about the past and how things could have been doesn't offer much excitement and interest in the future of developing.
Another way of saying I could have done
outcomes.
something. Another way of saying I could have done something is to say I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, I think somebody, again, some sage, somebody smarter than me, somebody I read at some point, basically said, once you make things and put them out into the world, they're no longer yours. And that is from an emotional, creative standpoint. It's from a business standpoint. I mean, unless you are a mix engineer, record producer, and radio promoter, like, you don't have control. Once you make things, let them go. And by the way, it's really hard. I'm saying this out loud, looking at you, looking at me. It's something that I reinforce in my head too. But it's like, once you make things and put them out into the world, they're out of the world. They don't belong to you anymore. You've done your part. That's what I always liked about guys like, I don't know, Johnny Depp or some of these other people that don't watch the movies they're in. He's like, I went and did my job, and then I'm on to the next thing. There's something very strange about that, but I think I've done that too. I've worked with some artists where I've never listened to the rest of their music, not because for any other reason than I don't need to invest more in this, and it's maybe the other songs I'm not as into or whatever it is. Like, I've worked on things and then totally forgotten about them. And on some level, that's kind of the healthiest thing. It's nice when something comes out and it's successful, and, my mom hits me up and says, I heard your song, and I go, great, that makes everybody happy. But, like, to try to wait for those moments, or wait for things to happen, or wait for somebody to get big, you're just wasting your time sitting around watching. I mean, you might as well be just making other things.
Yeah.
We've got a couple good questions this week. Do you want to get into a couple of questions?
We got 9 minutes.
There was one related to this, which you've spoken on before. Subat asked about money projects versus passion projects, which is sort of right in the conversation that we're talking about. when I thought about the question, I was like, I might start with this question and launch into a big thing about art and commerce, which we kind of naturally did anyway.
Yeah. I have an answer.
Yeah, you have thoughts about that?
I have an easy answer. They're all money projects, and they're all passion projects. Meaning, money fuels the capability to be passionate about the project, because other things get out of the way, and then some other times the passion fuels the opportunity to make money. Meaning, sometimes you have to take a gig that you might think it's for the money, because maybe it's not the aesthetic that you normally would touch, but that fuels the possibility to take the passion project later because you have a savings. So you're investing in yourself and your time. So I don't think you can have one without the other until you're at a certain level of financial freedom. And even then, I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because it's still a business investment. And people want you to do something. So if they're paying you to do it, it's because they need what you have to offer.
Yeah.
It's a business. It's an exchange. So I would take myself out of the equation. If someone is reaching out to me and wants to pay me to do something, then I owe it to them to say yes, to give them what they need from someone like me. So I don't think it's a personal decision to be made each time. I think there's a way to categorize the passion versus money after the fact, but I don't think it's about me, and I don't think it's my decision.
That's sort of an interesting answer. I have to think about that a bit. I talk about this Neil Gaiman commencement speech a lot, and I know a bunch of people on here have watched it.
Seen it a couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about at one point thinking of his creative career as like walking toward a mountain, just a distant mountain that you'll maybe never reach. Yeah. But when making decisions about taking gigs, thinking about wherever you are on your journey, is it taking you closer to the mountain or away from the mountain? And it may be at different points in your life, something that used to be taking you toward would now be taking you back. And I think you have to balance passion and money and those things all together. Because again, this is a business. We're trying to do this professionally. We're trying to have a career. It's the music business. It's art and commerce together. And there's plenty of opportunities for people to just make art in their bedrooms and not have commerce involved at all. And that's a wonderful thing. And I think probably the majority of creative,
sounds like a hobbyist to me.
Whatever. I mean, I don't even want to define hobbyist in the sense that you're not getting paid for it. And that's a totally valid thing. I would say the majority of creative endeavors that happen in the world are not done for money, probably mostly by children. Like this idea of just being creative is a really, really beautiful thing. But if you are trying to make it your profession, you just always have to balance them. And sometimes, like you talk about it, where you do one or two pro bono things a year where you're just like, I'm going to do something that's purely for free, but that might also be, you're still exchanging value. And so there's still, even if you're not saying I'm charging this much, you also know that you could be charging that much instead of doing it. So there's always, those things are always, if you're trying to be a professional, you're always thinking about it in some respect. It doesn't make it bad. It's just what it is.
I love that commencement speech, and I love that point of view. I think that what my strange answer kind of fits in there pretty tightly, because when you're saying what gig, or when he talks about which gigs takes you closer to the mountain, gig implies profession, right? A gig tends to be a hired position, job, creative, endeavor that is intended to exchange some sort of finance at some point, whether it's speculative and then can turn in. So when I'm talking about the getting closer to the mountain by both ways, meaning if you do something that's a passion project, which normally would translate to nobody believes in this yet, so I believe in it, so I'm going to help it and
or nobody's
not get
paying
paid
for it.
No one's paying it for it yet. So I don't really know. Like I want to even challenge the term passion project versus money project, because I get paid for things I'm very passionate about.
Yeah. Well, let's say that
a lot of the time. So
there are also going to be things that you are excited about, but aren't going to sell a bunch of records, or is never going to have a
exactly.
budget.
So that's why the money project versus passion doesn't seem like the vocabulary, the correlation of those two words makes any sense to me, because I get paid for passion and I do things that are passionate that I don't get paid for.
Well, how do you think about things that you know don't have budgets, I guess? Things that you're excited about that are just like, this is never going to make me money. It's not going to go win Grammys.
Who's a believer in it? Do I think that people will like it after I touch it? Like, will I bring value to it? Was another thing I wanted to bring up talking about that.
Will you enjoy the process too?
Will I enjoy the process? I tend to enjoy a lot of processes. I might be unique in that sense, where even like today's mix is going to be really hard. I really like the artist a lot. I've mixed a lot for him. The rough mix is not very good. I'm thrilled to go in and fix this one. The process is going to be very difficult, but I like the artist.
That's interesting.
Hit the early stages of this person's career. I like the A&R. I like the producer. I like the manager. I like all the people involved. I'm sure I'm getting paid my full rate for it coming from a label. That's not even on my mind. What's on my mind is, what is it going to take to get this to be where it needs to be? And it's going to be a tough day today. Like, I mixed 3 songs yesterday. I'm going to mix 1 today after this. I know it's going to take me all day to do this.
And to be fair, that's the luxury of success too, is that the projects that are more challenging, you're still getting paid and it's interesting. I think there's a lot of people who go, and somebody said in the chat, you're struggling with income, put such a damper on my creativity. Hate that shit. It's like, there are times early in the career where you're doing things you don't want to do, and I don't have an answer for that, because I've been through that too. And there have been times where, and I've told this story before, where I basically recorded loud, like Marshall stack electric guitars for weeks and weeks at a time it was a project that was done in another city. So I was staying at a house that wasn't my bed and I wasn't around my friends. And I basically just spent 10 or 11 hours every day listening to loud guitars and comping them. And I could not listen to other music outside of it. I couldn't, because my ears were just exhausted. So I spent a month not enjoying music for the first time since I was maybe ever. And I was like, oh shit, is this going to be what my life is? Like, maybe I want to just like go back to school and do this on the side, because this is a fucking bummer. And there's no good, I mean, we get back to the thing we were talking about before. It's like, you got to make irrational, like insane, passionate decisions sometimes to be successful. And I don't recommend it because it's hard out there. But
so I just want to say, because we have a minute left, and I mean, you can add something to this to close, or we can close on this. But the reason why I'm answering it the way I'm answering it is basically like, was it I on last week or the week before that? Whenever the last one I was on, we talked about the comfort zone. And I'm trying to challenge the belief in these words and these phrases that are used, and the way that they are conventionally used, or what the status quo is around the language. I don't see money and passion being on opposite sides of the spectrum. And I think we should come at it a different way. And I think you kind of came up with another way to think of it. But I don't think we nailed it yet, and I'd like to think.
But you understand what someone's asking when they're asking that question.
Of course.
So answer it in whatever language, whatever language you would use for that. I think is trying to be most helpful for people, whether it's money and passion or whether it's.
I think coming up with a new spectrum of what that means is more our interest, right? Like,
I think that's more helpful to
saying here 30-second commercial mixes for JP Morgan. Let me be creative with artists. Strange, but it worked. Not strange. I was paying my bills mixing for Tony, mixing with Tony, to be able to be a producer and write songs with hopes that I would get cuts. That was my quote unquote day job, doing scrap mix work, songs that were not very good, things that I wasn't getting credited on, like, because I didn't really want to, but it was reps, it was practice. You doing 30-second commercials for JP Morgan is going to level up your ability to be versatile on records. One of my best friends, Alex Goose, man, his musical understanding, doing clips for whether it's Apple or eBay or whoever he's doing these ads for, the level of musicality, understanding of genre is far, far superior to most record makers that I know that are very one track, that are great on their track. So I think there's another spectrum to come at this from, and I'd like to challenge both of us to find it. I don't think it's passion versus money, because they cross paths way too often to put them on a different side of the spectrum.
Fair enough. I love you, John. It's good to see you. I'm back in LA. Let's get dinner. The world is slowly
I'm in and
out
for 2 weeks. I won't be on next week. I'll be on a plane next Tuesday. Okay. So get one of your other homies on. But we'll talk off about that.
Maybe I'll hit TZO or do one of those things. Love you, John. It's good to see your face. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to be on the Discord after chatting. Show notes will be up soon, because Bradley has been putting them up very, very quickly. So if you want to follow again with notes of what we talked about, LiveWithMattRad.com. Love you guys. Thank you for checking it out.
Peace.
See you next week.
Yeah.